There was a stretch in the 1990s when Meg Ryan was arguably the most bankable actress in Hollywood. She wasn't just a working star. She was a genre unto herself, the face romantic comedy audiences trusted implicitly. When people wanted warmth, wit, and a happy ending, they bought a ticket to whatever Meg Ryan film was playing that season. The numbers backed up the reputation. 4 of her romantic comedies combined to earn well over $500 million worldwide, and by the turn of the millennium she was commanding a $15 million payday for a single film, a figure almost unheard of for an actress at the time. She had in every sense made it. But less than a decade later, that same woman was being dragged through the tabloids as a homewrecker, mocked for a disastrous televised interview, and quietly disappearing from the industry that had built her. This is the story of how that happened, and the more complicated truth behind it. She was born Margaret Hyra on November 19, 1961, in Fairfield, Connecticut, to a mother who had once acted and taught, and a father who taught as well. The stage name came from her maternal grandmother's maiden name, a small, practical choice that would eventually become one of the most recognizable names in American film. After starting college at the University of Connecticut and finishing coursework at New York University, she made a decision that derails plenty of acting hopefuls. She left school before graduating to chase the career full-time. It paid off. Her first real foothold came on the daytime soap As the World Turns, where she spent a couple of years in the early 1980s learning the mechanics of performing on camera before making the jump to film. Her first major film exposure came through 1980 SIX's Top Gun, where she played the wife of Anthony Edwards' character. It wasn't a lead role, but it put her in front of the kind of audience that remembers a face. 3 years later, she landed the part that would come to define her, Sally Albright in When Harry Met Sally, a performance built around the idea that men and women can't really be just friends. The film was a hit. It earned her a Golden Globe nomination, and it included one of the most talked-about scenes in modern comedy. From there, the 1990s became her decade. Sleepless in Seattle, French Kiss, and You've Got Mail. The latter two of a run that, alongside When Harry Met Sally, generated hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. Her pairings with Tom Hanks in particular became a kind of shorthand for on-screen chemistry. She also pushed for range outside the genre that made her famous. In 1994's When a Man Loves a Woman, she took on the far darker role of an alcoholic guidance counselor, earning a Screen Actors Guild nomination in the process. By 1998, she had 2 more hits in City of Angels and You've Got Mail, and by 2000 her $15 million paycheck for the kidnapping thriller Proof of Life cemented her as one of the highest-paid actresses working. Not every offer appealed to her, either. She reportedly passed on the role of Clarice Starling in The Silence of the Lambs, a part that ultimately won Jodie Foster an Oscar. Ryan's brand was warmth, not menace, and for years that instinct served her extraordinarily well. Long before Russell Crowe entered the picture, there was Dennis Quaid, himself an established leading man from films like The Right Stuff. When the two started dating in the late 1980s, Quaid was, if anything, the bigger name. That balance would shift dramatically over the following decade. They'd first crossed paths professionally on 1987's Inner Space, then reconnected the following year on DOA, at which point a relationship began. Plans for an early 1990s wedding were delayed after Quaid told Ryan he'd been dealing with substance addiction. He later described the period to the press as involving heavy, near-constant use, and said a frightening vision of his own death was what finally pushed him toward treatment. He got sober, and the couple married on Valentine's Day, 1991. Their son, Jack Quaid, who would go on to appear in The Hunger Games and The Boys, was born the following year. The marriage never fully stabilized. Quaid has since spoken about how uneven their fame became. In one later interview, he admitted that walking down the street with a wife whose name strangers shouted while his went unnoticed made him feel, in his words, like he'd vanished, a feeling he later chalked up to his own insecurity rather than anything Ryan did. The couple separated in June 2000 and finalized their divorce the following year. But the timeline became a flashpoint, because by the time it was public, Ryan was already being linked romantically to her Proof of Life co-star. For years afterward, Ryan maintained that the marriage had effectively ended before the press caught wind of it, and specifically denied that anyone had cheated. That account would shift somewhat by the time she spoke to Oprah Winfrey in 2006. when she described the marriage more bluntly as having been unhappy and essentially over for a long stretch before it officially ended, and said she probably should have walked away sooner. Quaid, for his part, later described the breakup to a magazine as something that shattered his sense of identity and felt, to him, like a kind of death. By most accounts, Ryan's marriage was already finished by the time she met Russell Crowe. The public didn't see it that way. When photographs surfaced of the two holding hands, the narrative was set. America's sweetheart had left her husband for an intense, famously volatile Australian actor. The two met filming Proof of Life in 2000, playing a hostage negotiator and the wife of a kidnapped man. Characters written to develop feelings for one another. Whatever was scripted apparently bled into real life. In July of that year, before Ryan's divorce was even finalized, the pair were photographed together leaving a party, and reports placed them together in restaurants and clubs across London during filming, then traveling together through California and Australia. People close to the relationship described two people who were completely absorbed in each other. Constant calls, frequent emails, long conversations. Ryan was described by one friend as deeply smitten. At one point, the two even went house hunting together in Australia, a gesture friends read as sincere rather than performative. They were also notably private. Both actors largely avoided press interviews for Proof of Life to sidestep questions about their personal lives, a decision that reportedly frustrated the film's director, Taylor Hackford, who felt the movie's promotion suffered as a result. The relationship didn't last a year. It began in early 2000 and was over by that Christmas, with the two spending the holiday apart and no public statements explaining why. But the reputational damage to Ryan lingered well past the breakup itself. She later described being cast as a Scarlet Woman in the press, the same actress once beloved for playing Sally Albright now being framed as a homewrecker. Her image took a real hit, and so, gradually, did her standing in the industry. The Crowe affair wasn't the only controversy to shape how the public saw her. In October 2003, Ryan sat down with British broadcaster Michael Parkinson to promote In the Cut, an erotic thriller that marked a sharp turn from her romantic comedy image. Parkinson pressed her aggressively about the film's explicit content and appeared to suggest her personal life. Her divorce, her relationship with Crowe, had steered her toward darker material. Ryan grew visibly uncomfortable, gave clipped answers, and eventually asked him to wrap up the segment. The backlash was swift. Parkinson called her behavior toward him and the audience unacceptable, and the British press branded her arrogant and difficult. A 2006 poll of British viewers even ranked the interview among the most shocking moments in UK chat show history. For years, the story stuck to her as the villain of the exchange. That changed somewhat in 2021, when Parkinson told an interviewer he regretted how he'd handled the conversation, admitted he'd let his own irritation show, and said he came across as pompous, though he added that Ryan bore some responsibility for the tension, too. Ryan has rarely discussed the encounter publicly. She's since described feeling scolded during the interview and said she simply left afterward without engaging further. The professional fallout compounded quickly. In The Cut and her follow-up, the boxing drama Against the Ropes, both underperformed badly. Not long after, Ryan stepped away from Hollywood for roughly 3 years, later describing herself as burned out and saying she'd felt disconnected from her own life during that period, as though she were watching it from behind glass. During her time out of the spotlight, public attention shifted to her changing appearance, with persistent and never confirmed speculation about cosmetic procedures. A 2023 public appearance drew renewed commentary online, and some outlets speculated the scrutiny even factored into her character being written as deceased rather than appearing on screen in Top Gun: Maverick. Ryan has generally declined to engage with the speculation, telling one interviewer to simply move past the topic and telling another that she tries not to dwell on unnecessary negativity aimed at her. She eventually returned to work, co-writing, directing, and starring in 2023's What Happens Later, a modest film, but one made entirely on her own terms. 2 decades on, Ryan's own account complicates the tabloid version considerably. Her position has been that the marriage to Quaid was already effectively over, meaning there was no intact family for the affair to destroy. She's also described the Scarlet Woman period as, in hindsight, oddly freeing,